Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back into another Cruiser Chat with Otram. Um, Same as usual, no real plan for this evening. Just whatever questions you guys have, I will try to answer them. You can either put them in the chat box typed in, or I put a link in the chat box where you can click on that and call in live, kind of Zoom style. So yeah, whatever questions you guys have, I will try to answer. And hopefully audio sounds okay. It sounds way louder in my headphones than it normally does. And I don't know. Ah, there we go. It was weird. I must have bumped that. And I got a couple of videos edited over the weekend, this past weekend, and those are now loaded onto the members page on YouTube, and then they'll hang out there while they're waiting their turn to go live. I've got them scheduled to go live one a week, each Friday for the next few weeks. And they're a mix of Cruiser, Tacoma, Corolla, and Camry videos. And I got a few more filmed this week that I've got to edit, and a couple of ideas on stuff to film. I just need to get the time to go down to the shop when we're not actively working on cruisers to film those, because they're not actual repair videos. They're more like discussion videos. So trying to mix it up a little bit, and get a little bit of varied content on the YouTube channel. And I played around. I did my first multicam video. I guess I filmed it last week, but edited it over the weekend. And that turned out pretty cool. I was doing a Corolla radiator and put a camera on either side of the engine bay, and synced them all up. So no matter where I was standing working, I could flip to the view that I wasn't blocking with my body, which worked out really well. And I'm going to try to do that more on the upcoming videos now that I figured out how to do it, and do it relatively easily. But yeah, that's about all that's going on at the shop. And the only other real announcement is not next week, but the following week's podcast. The live would fall on Thanksgiving, so we'll be skipping that one, and then be back the following week. So in case I forget to say it in next week's podcast, we won't be here on Thanksgiving Thursday. But yeah, other than that, any questions you guys have at it. I'm trying to think if anything interesting came through the shop this week that was fun or exciting. And there's nothing really. We got our first real cold snap of the winter this week, and we're starting to see batteries failing, which seems earlier this year than it has in the past. We've had 2 fail this week so far. Yeah, that's all I can think of. And I'm shooting for the 3rd or 4th time. I'm going to attempt to film changing the transmission fluid on a 200 series. I've tried several times in the past, and the first time I did it, our service info was missing a page, so I missed a step in the process. So the video I uploaded was wrong. Luckily somebody let me know, and I took the video down before it was up too long, giving people the wrong instructions. And I've since gotten, the complete service manual pages for that. And the other two times I've tried to film it, like I've knocked the tripod over or audio has cut out. Um, yeah, so it's like a cursed video. So I'm hoping tomorrow I can actually film it and get a decent video out of it. And let's see, we got a question. 1999 Land Cruiser with an A343F transmission, and it's only shifting in L, then manually to 2, and then D. What do you think? Um, I honestly don't know. I don't do automatic transmissions. Um, and we've never really had to diagnose them. Like, we don't see very many problems with them. I would check the fluid level, because if the fluid level's low, um, you'll see weird things. And I would check to see if there's any codes. Beyond that, I would be looking for a transmission shop to help me diagnose it, because we don't deal with them enough for me to be really knowledgeable on them. We just don't see enough faults in them. And I never really got into automatic transmission rebuilding and repair. So that is a very weak spot for me. And I unfortunately don't know. And Alex wants to know, what batteries are you guys recommending these days? Interstates are good. We've had good luck with those, but honestly, most of the time we just use the middle to higher end line of the local parts stores, on the assumption that if you're out on the road and you need to take advantage of the warranty, using an Advance or an O'Reilly or an AutoZone, one of their batteries, you have a much better chance of finding one of those, wherever you may be in the US, rather than using, some kind of specialty battery. And, we've had, about the same luck with all of the local parts store batteries, as long as you're not using, their bottom tier, as long as you're using like the middle or upper tier, they seem to last, as good as anything else. And they're just easier to warranty nationwide. We've also used Toyota batteries quite a bit because we can get them easily from our local dealer. But yeah, we don't really have a set battery that we use. We were stocking interstates for a while. Like we had them on consignment, but we weren't selling them often enough for it to make sense for them to stock them with us. Like they were having to rotate through the batteries so often because we weren't selling them, and they were having to, take older stock out. That they took the consignment batteries out, and we can still order from them and they'll deliver to us. But it's faster just to get a house brand battery. So that was a really long and rambling. I don't have a set preference. We have started moving. We were using AGMs, like on some of the wheeling trucks, but we started to notice that they were failing prematurely, and I think it's because like the vehicles that come from the factory with an AGM battery charge at a higher voltage than like the lead acid batteries do, and putting an AGM battery in an older vehicle that doesn't charge high enough, it seems like it doesn't fully top them up and they fail faster. So we've gone back to just using lead acid, in everything that doesn't call for an AGM from the factory. And I've seen there's like mods you can do with like diodes or resistors to up the charging voltage, to put AGMs, but haven't played with that yet. What is the roughest cruiser you guys have had come through the shop or the funniest cruiser story? Oh, we've had some rough ones. God, we had one. It just came in a couple of months ago. It had been sitting for years, like down, like in a beach town, and it sat for 5 or 6 years. And they towed it up to us to get it running, and it had very obviously been neglected before it was parked for multiple years in a salt environment. And by the time it got to us, like it was just gone. Everything that could leak did leak. It was a one of ZFE 80, so 95, 97. I don't remember exactly what year. But like anything that could leak did leak. Anything that could rust out was rusted out. Like the brakes were completely rusted. It wouldn't start, and I ended up pulling the fuel pump, and like you couldn't even tell what the fuel pump was. It was just like a rusty lump that came out of the gas tank. Inside of the gas tank, there was more gas tank on the bottom inside than whole gas tank. And we originally talking to the customer, it was like, one of those, hey, it's sentimental value. I want to do everything I can to get this back on the road. We're like, hey, this is going to be really expensive. And they were like, yeah, go through it. Tell us what it needs. So we had the intentions of doing a whole video series on that truck. And hey, this is how much work, and this is what you're going to go through, and this is everything that's going to go on, and all the pitfalls you're going to come into when you're trying to bring something like this back to life. So we shot like a really in-depth, inspection video, like going through it with a fine-tooth comb. And we did a video on like going through the no start, why it wouldn't start, pulling the fuel pump out and all that, because we were going to make a whole series of it. And then, when we actually sent the person the estimate, all communication stopped. And it took like 2 months to really get a hold of them, and they did not want to fix the truck. And came and picked it up. I've still got all the footage from the initial inspection and the, fuel pump testing, and I've thought about trying to turn that into some kind of video, but it'll be awkward because we shot it with the idea that it was going to be a series. So like the whole time we're doing the inspection, like we're referring to things in the future tense. But that's probably the roughest one we've had lately. We had a 100 series come in a couple years ago that was bought sight unseen from like Jersey, I think, and they brought it down to us to do a post-purchase inspection. And like the body mounts were just crumpling into the sides of the frame. The frame was so far rotted out of it. And just the whole truck, it was like, I don't know how this drove here. It was so bad, so rotten. And, same as the other truck, like the brakes were gone. It needed timing belt. It needed CVs. It needed a steering rack. The HC was blown out of it. Like everything that could be wrong was wrong. And, we told the people, we're like, hey, just cut your losses. Do not try to fix this truck. You really shouldn't even drive this home. There's nothing really holding the body onto the frame. So yeah, we've seen some really bad trucks, but then we've also seen some really, really nice trucks. We've got a 98 Tacoma in the shop right now that, it looks brand new. It looks so clean and brand new underneath. It's amazing. And then we had same customer, or not same customer as the Tacoma, but a customer brought us a 100 series that I think came out of Texas. that was just insanely clean, especially for 100 series. And we did the work on that, and they picked it up last week. No, Monday. Picked it up Monday, and dropped off an 80 series for us to go through that I want to say came out of like Arkansas. And both of them super clean, way cleaner than we're used to seeing. Um, all the guys like out in California, I am jealous of the rust-free cruisers they get. Like we don't get a ton of salt here in Virginia, but we're close enough to like Pennsylvania, Jersey, New York, the new Northeast, that we're getting, salty salt trucks in. Um, so yeah, a lot of the rough trucks we see, it's mostly rust that's killing them. We do see, somebody, got a deal on 100 or got a deal on an 80 series, and unbeknownst to them, they got a deal, because they're the fourth owner, and the previous three owners did not do any of the maintenance. Um, so now it's all coming due. Uh, and that's always hard to explain to somebody when they just bought a vehicle. It's like, hey, you really should have done a pre-purchase inspection on this, um, because that $5,000 truck you just bought for a great deal needs $10,000 in work to make it safe. Um, but yeah, and I can't think of a funny cruiser story, um, other than we were talking about uh, one of our trips years ago, wheeling at G Smitter back when it was still at Teleco. And one of our buddies had a first gen Forerunner, and he rolled it on its side on school bus. I think it was school bus. Anyway, school bus or backside at 11. But anyway, rolled his Forerunner on the side, and the ignition key was so sloppy that it fell out, and it fell out and went out the passenger window. And we're all scrambling, trying to push his truck back upright before the engine ran out of oil, because it was still running, and we didn't have any way to turn it off because the key fell out and went out the window. And ever since then, I think even to this day, that truck has a shoestring holding the key is tied to the steering column so that it can't fall far enough for him to not be able to reach it. And no, not Alan, but Alan, I'm almost positive Alan was on that trip. Um, it was my buddy James, also known as Wonder Nuts. Um, but yeah, that would have been back when I was wheeling with Alan. Um, so he almost assuredly was on that trip. Or if he wasn't on with us on that trail, he was definitely camped with us. He came up to Capital Land Cruiser Fall Crawl a couple years ago, which was awesome because I hadn't seen Alan in probably 15 years before that. And looking to bring back to life a 1972 Iron Pig, want to keep it all Toyota. Any thoughts on drivetrain? Um, so that I'm pretty sure that's an F, um, which is like the slowest of slow. Um, I haven't talked to him lately, but I'm pretty sure he's still doing it. But Cam Mosley at Mosley Motors down in Memphis, we put one of his 2Fs in an FJ62, and man, did that wake up a 62. it had way more pep than any other 2F I've ever driven, and just ran awesome. Granted, we didn't run it long term or long road trips or anything. We just, broke it in for the customer and test drove it. But that was an amazing running 2F. And it pulled hard. So I would definitely look at one of his engines. And we were just running it with a stock carburetor on it. Like no fuel injection or anything like that. And I think he does the Sniper fuel injection kits for him too. Which, everything I've heard about him is nice. I've never worked on the Sniper kits, but I know a couple of the guys in the local club have them and seem to like them. And then, depending on how crazy you want to go with it, you could put a 1FZ out of an 80 series in it. You could go 2UZ from 100. The sky's the limit if you've got the funding for it. And I think if it were me, I would go with a Mosley 2F and, either a 4-speed or if you really want to be highfalutin, H55F 5-speed. And to get the overdrive. But I don't think I've ever actually worked on a 55. I've had plenty of friends that have them, but I don't think I've ever worked on one. Oh, and Alex, since you're on here, and years ago you sent me counterculture coffee from down your way to try, um, I'm going to recommend Red Rooster Worka Sacaro from down in Floyd, Virginia. I've been drinking that quite a bit lately, and that stuff is good. I'm hoping my chat box is working right. It keeps telling me I've got new chats, but it won't scroll down anymore. Oh, and asking how's my head injury. For those folks that weren't here last week, last Thursday I was taking a drive shaft out of a newer 4Runner that was stuck. And when I finally got it loose, it came down and drilled me in the head and knocked me out. And I was not feeling awesome for chat last week and ended early. Head's all good now. There was some bruise earlier this week, but everything's hunky dory, all good now. I cut my hair day before yesterday. I got tired of it being scraggly, and I was a little worried it was going to be lumpy when I shaved it. But yeah, no, all was good. But thanks for checking in. And as an added bonus, when I told my running coach that I'd been whacked in the head with a drive shaft, he told me to take the weekend off from running, so I didn't have to do any running over the weekend, which gave me extra time to edit videos. It's funny, whatever emojis you sent, the podcast chat window thing I'm using must not know one of them because I got thumbs up, like strongman guy, and then there's just a blank box. I wonder if I do the show on stream. Nope, it just does it doesn't do the blank box. And you can tell it's starting to get chilly here in Virginia. Normally for chat, Artemis is sleeping on the guest bed behind me, but she's all the way back in the wall in the pillows curled up because she must be chilly tonight. Oh, and Cody, our service advisor, office manager, he brought up a video idea this afternoon of doing like a behind the scenes, like basically going through all the camera, audio setup, and everything we use when we're actually doing the YouTube videos and the podcast. Um, I didn't know if anybody would actually have interest in that. Like I know watching podcast channels and audio video channels that I watch, I like it when they go through their camera stuff. But that's because I'm trying to emulate them in my own videos. And I'm looking at their recommendations for camera stuff. Didn't know if you guys would have any interest in that. And if so, I will make a behind the scenes video on how we make the YouTube videos. Oop, and I got part of a new question in, but it cut off. Hopefully there's more coming through. But it's 97 FCJ80 that they're getting ready to do some major maintenance on. Cooling system and all the accessories. The radiator's been leaking. But dot dot dot. And I haven't gotten a rest of that yet. Ah, there it is. Um, I think that the front crankshaft oil seal's leaking. Uh, my thing won't. Can that be accessed while everything is off for the front? Yeah, you can do front crankshaft oil seal and the oil pump O-ring, you can actually do them with the radiator in, but it is a lot easier to do with the radiator and all that out since you're going to pull the fan and the fan shroud anyway. So yeah, if you think the front's leaking, I would, that would be an opportune time to do that. Where's my pen? The only caveat to that is we're seeing more and more timing cover leaks that look like oil pump cover or front main seal leaks. So you just want to make sure that it's not the timing cover leaking. And I'm going to write myself a note to make a video on telling the difference between timing cover and oil pump cover. But it's most likely front main seal, oil pump cover. But we are starting to see timing covers leak more often lately. But yeah, with the radiator out, that would be the time to do it. And Von Dutch wants to know if it's worthwhile to swap 100 series calipers and pads onto a 92F J80. I have no idea. I haven't done that swap or even heard of it. And we've actually stopped working on 91, 92 FJ80s just because they're a pain to get parts for, and we don't hardly see any of them. But I don't know, but you'd likely also have to change the master, because if you're going to bigger calipers, you'd want a master with more volume as well. And I don't know what that would entail. And then Andrew wants to know, how do you bleed the ABS modulator on a 93 to 97 Land Cruiser without the special Toyota handheld tool? We have a very, very high-tech method of doing this. We bleed the brakes like normal, go through load pressure, load sensing proportioning valve, do all the calipers. And then we have a gravel parking lot at the shop. So we start at one end of the parking lot, we floor it, and we slam on the brakes in the gravel to lock up the ABS and get it to activate. And we do that several times. And then we bleed it again like you normally would. That's the only way I know to get it to bleed without the handheld tool. I've never had a specific need to bleed the ABS modulator. But that's the way, like if we suspect there's air still stuck in there, that's how we do it. We just floor it and then slam on the brakes in a gravel parking lot or gravel road to get the ABS to actuate. And that seems to work it out. And then Cody is trolling me and wants to know how I feel about Hyundais. And Cody knows how I feel about Hyundais. And Randy wants to know if the aluminum timing cover can be resealed as well. It can, but it is a very, 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 very big job. To do it right, the timing cover, it's not the oil pump cover, but the actual timing cover, like the whole front of the motor. To do that right, oil pans come off, engine or the cylinder head comes off. To get that out of there. So like when we do it engine out, because it's much easier to deal with the oil pans with the engine on a stand than trying to snake them over the cross member and past the axle. And Von Dutch talking about the 100 series calipers on a 92. You got to be careful if you saw that from an Aussie mechanic, because their 100 series is not our 100 series. Their 100 series still has a solid axle, at least on some of them, as far as I know. So yeah, you got to be careful about that. And then wants to know if you can get a oil pan gasket for 3FE from Toyota. So far as I know, it's still available from Toyota. Last time we did one, that's where we got it. That's the only ones I'll use are the Toyota ones. Um, so far as I know, the oil pan itself is not available, but the gasket was last time we got one. Yeah, and Randy says he suspected the oil pans had to come off, but the cylinder head coming off makes it a no-go. Yeah, supposedly people have done it without pulling the cylinder head. The problem is, like, the head gasket, comes out to the front of the pan, or the front of the timing cover. So you've got to, like, pull the timing cover out, but you've still got the cylinder head gasket sticking out there, and then you stick the timing cover back in. The chances of getting that timing cover resealed with the cylinder head and everything happy seems like slim to none. So I've never tried it. I've heard it's possible. I've only seen one person try it, and it ended up coming to us because it was leaking right there where the timing cover met the head. And it's not that timing cover O-ring isn't, I wouldn't call it prevalent yet, but we're starting to see it more often. But I mean, even more often is 2 or 3 times a year, in all the 80s that we see. And it doesn't seem to be mileage dependent. I think it's more age related, because we're seeing it on low mileage trucks and high mileage trucks. I think it's just that the rubber in that O-ring has gotten, old and brittle, and it's starting to leak. And Wade wants to know about swapping the suspension on the Iron Pig. I've not done one. Like I was saying earlier, I don't think I've ever worked on an FJ55. My gut recommendation would be Old Man Emu, because that's what we always used on the 40s and the 60s. And that's likely a very similar suspension to a 60. I would call the guys at Cruiser Outfitters out in Utah. They are the local gurus as far as, suspension and all that. They supply so much Old Man Emu stuff. We always send everybody to them so they can get it dialed to exactly what people need. Yeah, Kurt and the crew out there are awesome at that kind of stuff. Yeah, and Randy says on his 80, engine has just under 190K on the clock and runs well. Time would definitely be the wearing factor. Yeah, at 190K, I would put money on it being front main seal, oil pump cover. And we always do those as a pair. It's likely not timing cover, but you know what? If you're pulling the radiator anyway, it makes sense just to do the main seal and the oil pump O-ring, because they are likely leaking. Every 80 has that leaking. It just the first couple times we ran across the timing cover leak, you have an 80 come in with an oil leak. You look at it, it's like, okay, it's leaking from the oil pump cover area, right? An oil pump cover. And then we did the oil pump cover O-ring, and we did the front main seal, and cleaned everything up, took the truck for a test drive, and it was still leaking oil. It's like, I must have nicked the oil pump O-ring, or boogered the front main seal putting it in. Do the job again, put it all back together, take it for a test drive, and it's still leaking. Um, and it was like, what is going on? And then we cleaned everything up like super well and put engine UV dye in. And that's when we realized, oh, it's actually coming from a little bit further back and higher up in that timing cover, and it's running down the front of the oil pump cover. It was just super disheartening, to have done the oil pump cover O-ring twice, and it was still leaking. And then this was before it had started to become a common leak, and we'd never seen the timing cover leak before. So it was just real disheartening to have to call the customer and say, hey, your oil pump cover and your front main seal, they were leaking, because the original oil pump O-ring just crumbled when we took it out. It's like, yeah, they were leaking, and we fixed those, and those aren't leaking anymore. But you've got a timing cover oil leak too, and to do that one, it's XYZ amount of work. So we always try to rule out the timing cover leaking before we quote the oil pump cover. And then we always, put in that caveat of, hey, it looks like it's all coming from the oil pump cover. There is a slim chance that the timing cover is leaking as well. But yeah. Yeah, I had done all of the oil leaks on my 80 and got it all sealed up, and I was like so excited. And then when I was putting the turbo on it, I was laying underneath trying to figure out where I was going to put the oil return line at. And an oil dripped and hit me in the forehead. And it was like, what is leaking? I just fixed everything. And the timing cover had gone, in the little bit of driving I had done since fixing everything. And that is just going to continue to leak until I blow that engine up with 360,000 miles in a turbo. Probably won't be long. But man, does the turbo make that truck fun to drive. Yeah. Yeah. Working twice is definitely maddening. Especially when working twice and it still didn't fix it. In 2005, LX470 lost tachometer on some crazy dashboards in Arizona. Any ideas where to start with repairing it? That is a really good question. Um, I'm assuming like speedometer, the other cluster gauge stuff works. Um, I've never seen a tack go out. I would check for codes. Um, oh, it's funny. I didn't even realize that said dashboards. I read it as washboards in my head. Um, but I've never seen a tack go out. Um, I would check for like instrument cluster codes. I can't remember off the top of my head if an O5 has codes in the instrument cluster or if it would just be engine codes for maybe not having a tack signal. Okay, all the other gauges work. My my gut guess would be that the servo motor or whatever drives the tachometer uh, died. Um, but I've never taken the speedo tach portion out of a 100 series cluster. I've taken like the temp gauges and the oil pressure gauges out, and I think fuel pressure. But I've never taken the speedo or tach out to see what's going on. Um, we've used a company called Circuit Board Medics, and they're down, I think, in one of the Carolinas. Um, we've used them to rebuild stuff for us, like computers, like putting new drivers in. I believe they do dash clusters as well, but I'm not 100% sure. I know there's companies out that like redo the GM dashes where the oil pressure gauges will do battle with the other gauges. Um, but my guess would be like you lost a connection, inside the cluster itself. I don't know how user serviceable that would be, like for just a regular person to go in and fix it. Like if it needed to be like resoldered or reflowed or whatever, because that is something that is not a skill set I possess. Like I've looked into doing like module and board repair and then realized that that is a whole niche unto its own, and the amount of time it would take me to get a skill set good enough to be able to fix those things, that it is way better for me just to send it to somebody that already has those skills. Really long-winded way of saying I don't really know. And hey, Lee, congratulations for making it. And I saw you were on the Cruiser podcast, and I completely blanking on the name. Yeah, I've got your episode downloaded, but I haven't listened to it yet. But you're in my queue. Classic Cruisers podcast. Um, and Andrew wants to know, he's had his 1FZ board 1 millimeter over, have oversized pistons and rings going in. Does it need an oversized head gasket? That would be something you'd want to talk to your machinist about. I don't believe that's a thing. I know you can get them in different thicknesses, like to compensate for decking the head or decking the block or changing compression ratio, but I've never seen them listed for different bore sizes. Like when you get the valve grind set or the engine, rebuild set from Toyota, there's only one choice in head gasket. Like there's not an overbore head gasket like there is overbore pistons and rings. So I would assume no, but I would check with whoever's doing the machine work to see if they have a different answer. And I know when we've ordered like Cometic head gaskets for turbo and supercharged trucks, we've had to specify the thickness of the gasket, but there's never been a way to specify bore size. So I would assume that it doesn't matter, but I don't know for sure. And yeah, like Lee's saying, I don't think the pistons go past the head, because usually I'm going brain dead. The ridge where they stop and the oil cokes up in the top of the cylinder, that's just below the head surface. So I don't think they go up past there, so I don't think it would interfere. And I didn't realize that you can get different thickness head gaskets from Toyota. Oh, for the 1HD. That may be. For the I've never done one of the diesel motors, at least not that far in. Um, but for the 1FZ, I've never seen the different thicknesses. Gotcha. Yeah, the diesel side of things is something I've never learned. With us not getting the diesel cruisers here, I've just never had to work on them. And at this age, um, not gonna learn. Yeah, Andrew said he wasn't able to find any other head gasket bore diameter sizes available either. Yeah, as far as I know, that's not a thing. But sometimes machine shops have weird sources where they can get weird stuff. So I would just double check with whoever's doing your machine work. Um, but I don't think that's a thing. And Lee says he's trying to learn diesel now. It's interesting. Yeah, like I love the theory of operation behind a diesel, but like learning all the injection timing and all that jazz and tuning on them, yeah, I'm too old for that. I'll stick with gas. And when you guys are done on this podcast, go check out Lee, Solve Function, uh, on Classic Cruisers podcast. Okay, and Lee says his manual doesn't specify different head gaskets for oversized piston rings or oversized pistons. Yeah, I'd never even thought about that. Because you would think, if you're boring it over, you're moving, like, you're getting into the landing space of uh, the clamping area between the deck and the head. Going brain dead. Oh, and there's a Cruising to Camp podcast. I have not seen that one. I'll have to check that out as well. My podcasts are all boring stuff. They're all like running, fitness, coffee, and like shop management. And I listen to one on audio video production, but mostly because that guy has awesome taste in music and very cool stuff about making YouTube videos. And I mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, but I don't think anybody was actually logged in when I said that. But I got several videos edited over the weekend And those are up on the members only page on the YouTube channel. And then they will slowly work out one a week from there to the regular YouTube channel. But I've been putting everything as I edit it. I've been trying to put it on the members only page for a little while first, as like a bonus preview for the folks that help support the channel. I've been way behind on shooting videos lately, but I got a couple out over the weekend. Those are up there now. And I filmed a couple more this week that I hopefully get through editing this weekend. And then I've got some ideas for other stuff to film. So hopefully I will be getting better at timely video releases. I finally got the filming workflow to where it's not as intrusive to day-to-day cruiser work. Like I can just be like, oh, this would be a cool video to shoot today, and just wheel everything over, shoot the video, wheel it out of my way. And it doesn't add a horrendous amount of extra time to doing the repair. So I'm hoping that'll help me get more stuff out more timely. It's probably going to be a lot of just general basic maintenance. I may try to go back and redo some of our early videos now that we've got better camera equipment. Like, if we have an AHC truck come in, try to reshoot that video on 100 series, because that was shot like on a point and shoot camera way back in the day. And I think the mini truck FJ40, FJ60 knuckle video was also shot on a point and shoot camera. So I may go through and try to reshoot stuff like that. And if you guys have any suggestions on videos that you would like to see, send them my way, and I will do my best to make it happen. A lot of people don't seem to realize that we're a working shop. That I'm not like a YouTube production company or something, and that I'm not just working on my own vehicles. Like when we shoot the YouTube videos, they're customer vehicles that are in for repair, and so for me to shoot a video, it has to be like a video that makes sense to shoot. The truck is going to be there long enough for me to shoot it without having to keep a customer's truck longer than normal, and I also have to have time in my day to shoot it. So it can be difficult to get videos out. But yeah, it's funny because like we get like requests for videos, and people think that we just have a shop that just does YouTube videos, and that we can just like pull a truck in and do repairs on it just to make videos, which would be amazing if that were a thing. But it is unfortunately not. So I can only do repair videos when they actually come through the shop as legitimate repairs. And as a side note to that, a lot of people don't seem to understand that we're a working shop, and like we get calls for like tech help all day long, and we get some people that get angry when I can't, stop working on the job that I'm working on, that I'm getting paid to work on, that I can't stop working on that to come answer their questions on the phone. Which, as much as I'd love to be able to help people, I've got to do the work in the shop, to get paid to get food. Because as much as I like doing YouTube does not pay the bills. Which is why we set up the cruiser consultation, where you can schedule, a one-on-one consultation with me. And like right now, I'm just doing those on the weekends where it doesn't interfere with the day-to-day shop schedule, shop life. And I've done 3 or 4 of those so far, and they've been a lot of fun. there's been some difficulties, trying to do troubleshooting when, the people that are calling for the consultation, do not have, the diagnostic tools that, like a shop would have. So trying to work around that and figuring out ways to test things has been interesting, but a lot of fun. So if you are looking for one-on-one cruiser help, there's a link down in the description on here, and there's also a link to it on our webpage. But yeah, we're getting to be 9 o'clock, so I'm going to jump off of here for the evening. I'll be back next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, like usual. But thanks for everybody that tuned in, because without people tuning in and asking questions, it's just me here staring at a camera. So I appreciate it and hope y'all have a great week, and I'll catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in.